just send it over to Stephen.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for staying in the room. I don't like public speaking, so I'm a little bit nervous. But today we're going to look at intelligent automation for AWS infrastructure using Terraform and Structure.io. I'm a developer for Villatech. So I've been at Villatech for the last 8 years. We primarily work on networking, cloud networking, professional services, and managed services. And what we found was that we have a very wide range of skill gaps from your experienced engineers that are used to building stuff in the cloud, and then we have our interns coming in that have absolutely no clue on how to do stuff with infrastructure as code, and we're trying to ramp them up as fast as possible. So what we aim to do is build a platform where we can kind of compress that skill gap, make things very simplified, easy, and quick to do. And we did that with a tool that we have been developing in-house called Structure.io. So most of my demo today is actually going to be a live demo because I live life on the edge. So this is Structure.io. It is an abstraction on top of Terraform. So everything that we do within Structure.io is built in Terraform code behind the scenes. So you can take that away. So in Structure, we have our workspace in the middle, and we have our provider panel. Within our provider panel, we can then filter through all of the AWS resources. As this is Terraform, we do also support many other providers. There's 300 out of the box. But we can filter through these resources really quickly. We can search through them. We can find, let's say, a VPC, and we can drag it into our workspace. Once we select the VPC, we're presented with a few different things. We've got our config panel here on the left. We've got quick chips, and we've got our HCL view. So the whole idea of Structure was to teach everyone as they're using Structure, let's teach them Terraform. Terraform is a great tool. As you know, vendor agnostic. It works everywhere. It works for many different platforms, as like cloud as well as appliance level stuff. So to teach and to assist with the Terraform code building, we can really ramp up the skill gap. Teach the juniors really fast and get things going really quickly. So once we have the resource selected, we can start configuring the resources. So
this resource you're doing is the VPC one?
Yep.
Okay.
So building a VPC, added a side block. We can add tags. If I could type. There you go. AWS community demo. Oh, AWS demo. That'll do. So we can quickly add the resources. Let's quickly name that as well, demo. And that was from drag and drop. Very simple. But we want to take this one step further. This is where Structure began, drag and drop. That's not that fun anymore. AI is the new big thing. So we wanted to build AI into this. So we've done some cool stuff with it. We can add a resource into our AI. So what this is going to do is give context to what we want to ask the AI about. So we've selected our VPC. I can say create a subnet. So I've given it a reference to the VPC. If everything goes well, demo gods, be nice to me. It's found the VPC that I passed into it. It's given it a side block. It used the next subnet that we have in that range, and I can add that to the workspace. And you'll see that it's also linked my VPC to my subnet. So this is another area of Structure that came really handy for people coming into Terraform, used to doing things in the console. The links really show the relationships between things, and it helps identify maybe mistakes when you're writing code by hand. Maybe I referenced the wrong VPC. So the links kind of validate exactly what you're doing. Does everything look like I'm doing the right thing? So we can also refactor code with the AI. So if I select the VPC again, being crazy, there we go. Select the VPC, right click it, start a new chat. We can start refactoring. So use a variable instead of for the slider block. So I was going to understand the code I've given it. It's going to default my variable name. Again, it's going to update my current VPC, and we're going to update that in place, and we're going to add the new variable to our workspace. Again, showing relationships between the variable, and now the VPC, we've updated that VPC as well, as we can see in the HCL there on the right. So we can utilize the AI. We have an example online, is quite fun, where we convert something from Azure into AWS, selecting a whole project, highlighting the whole thing, asking the AI, how do I do this in AWS? And it will convert everything to the better platform. So the next part of it is, not everyone knows how to write good code. So if I open up a project where we've built out a few things, so here we've got our network, we've got compute, we've got outputs, variables, and security groups down here. I've purposely left some stuff that's not right. So as we're building the code, we have an analysis tool that's constantly scanning our code in real time. Am I doing the best practices for AWS? Am I tagging things properly? Am I adding descriptions here for my security group? Am I enabling the HTTP endpoints on the instance, for example? So we get that feedback in real time as we're building things. Again, people who aren't familiar to Terraform might not know that that's what they need to do. So we make it nice and available to them. We can add the description. Demo, it's going to scan my project. Now I only have 2 mistakes within my project, which is a lot better than what I was before. Also validation. So say if you're copying and pasting code from online, which is what we all do, right? And we have an old example that, didn't have the right syntax for something. We used a string where it should have been a bool in the tool, again, exposing things. So we're scanning the code in real time again, and we're telling the user, that's not what I wanted to do, or Terraform saying, that's not what I wanted a bool, let's change it to that, and let's fix it. Now we have no problems in the project. As well as like presenting the code, we also have documentation. I think one of my biggest pain points with working with something like Terraform, you're always back and forth between an IDE to the documentation, trying to find the resource you're working with, trying to find exactly what those parameters are, or what they do, what they mean, and how do I fill them in. Some of them have options that aren't necessarily obvious. So we have that built straight into Structura. You can reference those things. Again, saving you time, just making things a little bit easier. I like the easy life. I'm gonna switch project again to an EKS build. Within EKS, similar as before, this one has a better demo for showing cost. So as we're building stuff in AWS, I think I've definitely caught myself out a few times. We've scaled something up too far. It's cost me a lot of money. I want to cry a little bit, and then I have to pay for it. And I think something like Terraform, that's very easy to do. You're not necessarily aware of what the costs are associated to the code that you're writing. So we had the cost explorer built straight into Structura too. So with the cost explorer, we get an overview of exactly how much this deployment is going to cost us over a period of a month. But we can also play around with this data too. So let's say if I want to scale up my workers to 4 workers, we can increase the price. If we want to go back down to 2 workers and we want to say they're only going to be active for half the time in a month, we can scale that down. So we can predict and calculate exactly how much our projects are going to cost. And we're developers or engineers, cloud engineers. Sometimes we don't really care about the cost, but there are people that we work for that do. So building this into your code, reporting on it, and this can all be integrated with CI/CD platforms. You can open up that visibility into your projects, communicate with the financial people that do care about it, and gain awareness across the team. So yeah, it's been really handy for us, and you can quickly spin up projects. You can change things around. So if you want to switch out for a different architecture style, how much is that going to cost me versus how much my current architecture is going to cost me? And you can kind of calculate that before you're actually deploying and incurring those running costs. The next thing that we wanted to add to Structura is importing. So I think a lot of times we sometimes go to console, we add stuff. But our company want us to use infrastructure as code, which is all great. I think there's many, many benefits to infrastructure as code. Sometimes it's easier just to mock something up right in the platform itself using the console. So we built an importer. So the importer is going to scan all of our existing resources within AWS based on some filters. So I've tagged some stuff that we have running. I can't talk and type at the same time, bear with me. So tag some stuff in AWS. We can then select those services that we actually want to import. So let's say EC2, security groups, VPC, and a subnet. And this is now going to scan my live infrastructure. As long as I typed everything in correctly, we should get some results, which we do.
So this is a good example because me being on the engineering side, you being on the developer side, we're in the console building out the infrastructure. We don't know the infrastructure as code, the Terraform code, how to build that out. So we build this entire environment in AWS, and they're like, well, we got to get into a code. So this is a perfect example of how to take what we built in AWS, now import it into a project where we can manage it as infrastructure.
Yep. So from the tool, we can import everything. We can click the import button. So what the import button is going to do is convert everything that is found in AWS, change it to HCL, which is Terraform's language. It's going to run your Terraform imports behind the scenes. So once Terraform is handling something and managing something, it needs to know what that resource is in the state file, so it can calculate drift or changes between that infrastructure. So now that's imported, I can sort those nodes. We can make it look pretty if we need to. So just drag these around a little bit. And now we have a representation of what we have already in our console. Everything has been converted to HCL. Let's open up that again. So we can see the HCL block that has been imported directly from Terraform. If you were doing this by hand, it's kind of time consuming. Yeah. I've worked on projects where I've had to import about 460 resources. If I had to do that by hand, I don't know what I would have done with my life. It would have been a bad time. But with the import tool, I was able to do all of those 460 resources in a couple hours. And you know, it gets you most of the way here. You might want to change things. So there might be standards that you have within your organization or code practices, code styling, so on. You might want to templatize some of the things, change things out for variables. But again, we can use that AI. We can select those resources. We can say, switch this out for a variable, or modify it in a certain way. For example, I think security groups probably is a good example of where you might want to use the AI and refactor the ingress and egress rules into separate resources. That's the recommended way of doing it within Terraform. And you can utilize the AI to quickly refactor. And there are some little caveats. I'll highlight some now. So the AWS API wants the customer owned IP on launch to be defined, where Terraform does not. So if I was to run a plan right now, which I can do straight from structure, is going to complain about that. So there is a little bit of cleanup that we have to do. So just remove them from the subnet. And you can do that both from the config panel and from the HCL view. And I messed something up. I'll just get rid of that. And now it's comparing what we have online in AWS versus what I have in my infrastructure as code. You can see no changes. So we have a one-for-one match within our code very quickly and very minimal effort compared to doing that by hand. And yeah, we're pretty much there. Did you want to talk some of your experience?
Well, I mean, some of the things that you were just mentioning, you want to go to the console, maybe show a change in there. Of how, let's say we got this example of a project that's for stage or some sandbox environment. We want to change this to a production environment. So change some variables, change some IP addresses, and you can see how that looks from this perspective. But if we go to the AWS console, it'll do that update for us.
Yeah, and you also reminded me one of my points that I didn't mention too. So when we run the plan, structure is taking the output from Terraform that we'd normally get, workflows that have worked with Terraform, you get created, updates, deletes, and it will tell you exactly what's changing. You can see that here. So at the moment, I've got a variable here that's, or a ball that's changing from false to true. With Terraform, say if you have a very big build, sometimes it's very easy to miss something. Within structure, we also highlight exactly what's changing within that deployment, again, in real time. So we can see here that the public subnet has a change, the instance has a size change there, and the security group has the description that I added. If we were going to do a bit more of a destructive build, so let's say we change the whole network spacing, and this is where you can get caught out sometimes if you miss something. So we're running the plan again, it's scanning changes. And then if we run the plan view now, we can see everything with a red dot is actually going to get destroyed and replaced, which obviously, if you're in production, that's a bad time. Again, we might not want to do that. Sometimes it's expected, but the plan view really helps, stop that from happening before you push a change, as well as integrating with your GitOps workflows, having approvals and so on. You don't have to push directly from structure. You can do whatever works best for you and your organization. Yeah, as Kamil was saying, let's make a change. Let's go back to the import project. I didn't save the position, so let me.
Yeah, maybe we go to the AWS console and see what it is before make
Yep.
a change to that.
Yeah, bear with me. Console. This is East 2.
Right. So the whole idea, infrastructure as code is to make it coded, right? So if you have a change, and we're talking small changes, but I'm developing projects with my team. We're talking transit gateway, gateway load balancer, third-party firewalls, virtual appliances, spoke VPCs. Then we got to add another VPC. Having to do that manually every single time takes a lot of time. You treat it as infrastructure as code. You can do it for your dev environment, your stage environment, your prod environment, and then also create that template. So not only for this business side of things, but for a different business. Just change your variables, change your naming nomenclatures, change some variables, and now you have that exact same template that you've developed and tested and know it's true and good, put it to a different business side of things.
Yeah, thanks for that. So while I was talking there, I was just changing something simple, a tag. So we've changed the tag. We can see that in the plan. We're changing it to welcome AWS community.
The tag is for which one? VPC?
This is for the VPC.
So can you show the tag or?
Yep.
Yeah, let's
So
see what
we
that
currently
looks like.
have structure import demo,
And then just change it right there
updated
for
in
you.
real time, console
There you go.
updated, and we push those code changes. The other thing to note as well with the import, because we are scanning it as we do the import, so you can import customer environments, find anything that needs to be tweaked, improved, and so on within their environment. You can work through those tasks within structure. It's a nice list, so you can just go through them, fix things, improve things as you see fit, and you're not wasting time trying to dig through all that HCL code. Everything's highlighted straight away. And yeah, that was.
So another thing you want to highlight is the validation point here. So again, being from an engineering team, I'm learning it. I'm still trying to get Terraform under my breath around, but I'm coming from an engineering side of things. He's in the development world all day, every day, so he's on that side. He doesn't know engineering. So we kind of match and clash and like, how do we do this? How do we build and stuff like that? So this helps us. If he's busy, I'm busy. It helps us kind of validate our own work and say, okay, does this look good or am I missing something? I don't have to reach out to him when he's on a meeting or on a call with the customer. I can actually go to the validation tool and see, oh yeah, I'm actually missing this syntax, this is wrong, or this is coded not the right way. I don't have to reach out to him every single time and be like, what am I doing wrong here? It'll validate that for me. The analysis tool is huge because I have team members that are brand new to AWS. They've never done it before. What am I doing wrong? It's the best practice. Am I missing something? They can go through a validation of the analysis and say, oh yeah, he did mention that when we were talking about it, or I did learn this, that I did a security with documents, everything have to come down to more fine, zero trust perspective, at least privilege. So that helps our team out of the analysis and the validation side of things. Maybe we can try to do a demo of like add a VPC, add some subnets, create a route table in that OpenAI portion of things. So let's add a little bit more complexity to it. Just to show like we have what, 2 subnets here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Add 2 more. There we go.
And then I want to add those 2 subnets to a route table, create a default route to something.
Yep. So it's going to take everything I've fed it. It knows what subnets are already existing within that environment. It's going to fix those cider blocks for me. That was going to take a little while for the demo to go through this. But yeah, it's referencing everything I've given it. So it's going to use everything that matches the other subnets that I highlighted and then change some of those parameters. So it's going to keep things very similar to what we had before. We're going through the second subnet right now.
But you can see the key piece here is that you can sit back and watch this do it for you. You know, you don't have to learn Terraform overnight. You can have a tool help build those resources for you. There's things that I don't recall. What are the required parameters for an HCL code block for Terraform resource? This builds it for me. It'll validate it, and if I'm missing a parameter and I change it and I do something wrong, it'll catch it.
Yep, so we can run a plan again after adding those 2 subnets. If everything went well, we'll see 2 resources to create, which we do. And before I push it, subnet says 3 currently, we're adding 2 more into here. Push those changes, confirm it. Again, don't have to do this through Structura. Structura is actually writing all of our infrastructure as code to your file system as Terraform files. You can integrate that with Git, like as I mentioned before. Looks like that pushed already. Give it a refresh, and now we have our subnet. So very quick. I didn't have to type anything, didn't have to do anything apart from add 2 more. That's what I added to Structura, and it's created those 2 subnets for me. So yeah, open it up to questions. We'll also be outside the room if there's any more questions as well. We'll hang around. So yeah, feel free to. Yeah, I've never had it respond with, I don't know how to do that. You are right on the hallucination side of things. And I think that's our saving grace as engineers. You still have to have expertise into what you're trying to do. For the most part, is going to get things right. The biggest downside I see to something like OpenAI is that it might suggest something that's from, a slightly older version of a provider. So something might be deprecated already, or it's not giving you best practices. So security groups are a good example of that too. A lot of the times, and route tables, a lot of the times it will try and push those routes into a route table. So you have a route table and then nested routes inside of that. But you can fix it through the AI too. So if it suggests that, you can say actually change those routes to use the AWS route resource, and it'll pull them out and add them as separate resources. So yeah, AI is definitely not going to replace us at this point. I hope. But yeah, I think you still have to have that fundamental knowledge of what should be there. I see it as kind of a pair programmer, someone that's looking over my shoulder. I can ask it a question, and it's going to help me, get most of the way there. I just might have to clean up a few things. Yep. Yeah, we support modules. So we support that's not structure. This one, we support all of the different blocks within Terraform. So modules. All my examples today have been using a root module essentially, but you can import a module, select the source. So the source can be from your local file system. It can be from Git, it can be from the private registry or a public Terraform's public registry. You just select the source, initialize, and it will pull it in, and it will read the schema from the module based on the variables and the outputs. Yes.
So related to that, is the AI system smart enough to know for my office? So if I say you need devices,
It's not smart enough now, but that's a great idea. I think we have. we'll do that. Yeah, it doesn't know what modules you have
So it's gonna write raw Terraform.
most of the time. Yeah, you can say like modulize, select something, modulize it, and it will, make variables and outputs out of that. But you'll still have to build it with that in mind in your head, make that module to start with, and then ask the AI to input those resources into them.
Good question.
It goes in their server, activity server. So in this case, does it send any data back to their server?
Not muted.
Sorry, feedback over. So ChatGPT stores its data for 3 days. It's for basically policing. It doesn't share. So if you were to post something to ChatGPT, it doesn't use what you sent it as a response for someone else. They keep it there just to make sure people are behaving as they're using it. And then that's all in their policies, their terms and conditions of ChatGPT. No, so it's not storing it on their side other than for the audit trail. It's not data that ChatGPT then references in the future. Yeah. You would have to do that within the conversation. It's another great idea where we could store those previous conversations, but at the moment it would be a sequence of messages back and forth between a user for one specific conversation. As soon as you clear it at the moment, it will be from scratch essentially. But it's a great idea.
Right, so if you had a resource that you created from the chat, just like VPC, just create a subnet, for example, and then you decide, I don't like this CIDR block, let me change this up. So if you try to do that right now, you can see that different from just create a subnet with CIDR block 10.10.0.0/24. It'll create it, and then you decide, oh no, I can't use that, I'm using it for something else. Make it 10.100, or you can't think it, you forgot the 0.
Yeah, so the other thing you can do as well to add to that is you can close the chat and add a new block to the history, to the conversation. But like I said, as soon as you clear it, then you're starting from scratch. So you can continue an old chat, the previous chat essentially. But anything past that, it will be from scratch. No problem. Yes. You could probably talk. I haven't tried to do that personally. So when we have multiple environments, we use workspaces for the most part. So we switch workspaces. We're in Terraform, which is down here at the moment. I only have a default one. We could add new ones. Mm-hmm. Serverless as in just lambda or serverless yeah. I haven't tried it. I would have to come back to you on that. I'll get your contact information maybe. Yes. I had a hard time hearing you then, sorry. You say Terra Grunt? That's something that's in the roadmap for now. So it's one of the next tasks that we are adding to Structure to support Terra Grunt and the way that they structure things. So yeah, coming soon.